Hello there, welcome back and welcome to a slightly different video today. Today I am doing a review of one of the additional parts that you can buy for this model. So these are the BnB scale ship jewellery parts. These are cast in bronze and you can get propellers and also anchors. I bought these off the Facebook group, but you can also get them via other means, which I'll talk about a wee bit later on. Now I should say beforehand, I feel it's important whenever you do a review to say something like this. These have been bought with my own money, I bought them of my own volition, I wasn't asked to buy them or anything like that. And I'll be saying exactly what I think about these. No one's asked me to say anything specific. This is just my own thoughts and opinions on the product and what I think of them. So without any further ado, let's crack on. So I thought I'd start off by showing you exactly what we're actually reviewing today. We've got one of the two large wing propellers. The other one, of course, is actually on my model. I've took this one off just for the review. We've got one of the centre propellers. You can get either of these. You can get the 4-blade, as I'm showing you here, or the 3-blade. The 3-bladed one is on the model, the 4-blade is off. I bought both. Got your main anchor, which I've already cleaned up. Comes in two parts, shaft and the blades, and they slot together thus. You've got the two anchors on either side of the bow. This one I've already cleaned up. Again, comes in two parts. Then here's one that isn't cleaned up. You can see the nub left over from the casting, and the same on its shaft. There's a little nub at the bottom left over from the casting. And then two smaller anchors. This one, which had its home on the forecastle deck, and this one that sits right at the aft on the poop deck. So that's what we are reviewing today. So what am I actually comparing against here? Well, first and foremost, I'll use my own opinions, thoughts, the sort of experiences I've had dealing with these actual components. But on top of that, we're going to use these, which are the offering you get direct out of the Trumpeter box. These are injection molded in polystyrene, and in the box you get two wing propellers, one of each screw, and you get two central propellers, and you can choose which one you use out of the 3 or 4 blades. You get all the anchors, but I'm only going to show one. The other thing I'm going to use to compare is the KA set. So here is one of the KA set wing propellers. The other is over here, and I've painted that in bronze. In the KA set you also get this 3-bladed central propeller, but you don't get a 4-bladed propeller. And of course the KA set main anchor, and we'll be comparing against the bronze castings. So before we do any comparison, I thought I'd run through how these parts are actually made. So these are made by a process called lost wax casting. It's exactly the same process you would use to make really fine jewellery, and it's not the sort of thing that many people could do in their own home. I certainly couldn't do it. Have tried pretty disastrously. It's a proper art form. Really skilled work goes into making that sort of stuff. So the way that you'd actually produce this is you'd start off with a 3D model of what you want. You'd then make a wax model out of this, make a mould around that model, heat it up very hot so the wax runs out, and then cast your actual filler metal, in this case bronze, into the aperture, and you're left with a copy. Note please that that is an extremely quick version of how you do lost wax casting. It's significantly more complicated than that. If you're interested, there's plenty of interesting videos on YouTube showing you how it's done, but it's a very complex process. The reason I showed you the KA set here, this is a propeller from the KA set, is because these propellers used the KA set as a model to make these. So these are essentially a bronze clone of the KA set parts, and that goes for the anchors as well. So first up is the wing propellers. The first one here is the Trumpeter offering in much more detail, and you can see it's unmistakably a propeller, but beyond that there's not a huge amount of detail on it. The KA propeller is far better. You can see there is the propeller blades. You can see the actual bolted on detail. The cap of the propeller right there, and they've captured that nice sort of bulbous look of these props, which was peculiar to the Olympic class. So these are quite nice, and they are a big improvement over the Trumpeter. You can see as well that the actual diameters are more accurate on the KA set. The Trumpeter isn't quite large enough. Now the cast bronze, as I've already explained, this is virtually identical to the KA prop because they are clones of each other. It has all of the same features, the bolted detail, the prop cap and so on. It's got those lovely little flicks at the end of the prop blades. The advantage, of course, of this is that it's made out of the same material that Titanic's actual propellers were made of. It's made of bronze. And so because of that, you get all the little peculiarities that you get with actual bronze metal, that slightly bizarre way it tarnishes, and you get the slight sort of pitting in some areas. Now, that is perfectly achievable. Here is a KA propeller that I have painted myself, but you can see the difference quite clearly. You can see that one has been painted and the other is actual metal. Someone who's a better painter than me may very well be able to make their KA propeller look like it's made of real metal, but I think that's probably beyond my skill set in painting terms. So now the central propellers and the kit with its 4 blades and the kit's 3 blade. Again, these are both injection moulded in polystyrene. And to be fair to Trumpeter, I think they've done a better job on the central propellers than they did on the wing propellers. If we compare the cast bronze against the Trumpeter kit, the shape is much more reminiscent than the wing propellers achieved. The diameter is still a wee bit off. You can see that the bronze propeller is more true to life on the diameter, and it's just subtle little other things as well. You know, the blades, they're just that little bit thinner. These are thick, and you know, bear in mind this is 1:200, so scale this up 200 times and you end up with an unrealistically thick propeller. So these are better than the wings, but they're still not quite there in terms of detail for me. The cast bronze, as I say, propeller blades are nice and thin, and the shaping of the cap on the propeller is really nice, really sharp, and it is actually quite pointy at the end. Now, as I say, you can get these bronze parts with either 3 or 4 blades. Did the Titanic have 3 or 4 bladed propeller in the middle? I think it was a 3-bladed propeller, but I'm not really willing to discuss that because discussions of such go on forever. The people who made the KA set obviously think it was 3-bladed as well because they only provide you with a 3-blade. So one of the advantages of these bronze parts is you can either get the 3 or the 4 or both. I got both. The 3-bladed one is on the model because that's what I think it was. And I've got the 4-bladed. But obviously this is also good for anyone who's doing an Olympic model or on a Britannic model as well. And now the anchors. I'm not going to bother showing you the KA one because they are very similar looking. But here is the cast bronze. You can see that the detail on it is absolutely stunning. They've even got that the locking pins that go in the side of the anchor there. As I say, this disassembles. So you've got the shaft, and the shaft actually has the chamfers that it would have had on the real anchor. And then the main body as well. And again, the quality of the casting is superb. The detail on these is just remarkable. I mean, you know, these are my hands, and it's just a bit smaller than my thumbnails. We're talking about tiny, tiny components, and yet the detail and the accuracy is superb. It really is. I mean, this is so good that you could use this as a proper anchor. You know, it works as a proper anchor. The shaft and the blades rotate independently of each other. So if you wanted to have a model with a lowering anchor, you actually could have this, and this could very happily bury itself into the mud at the bottom of a pond and hold your boat in place. Now, by comparison, here's the kit anchor, and again, I don't think it's the worst bit of the kit by any means. It has an independent shaft, but in a few places you just see where the detail on the kit comes up short. The chamfers that I talked about on the bronze part, they're just not there here. This is a square bar rather than a square bar with the edges taken off. And the blades, they're quite good, but once again, if we look at it next to the bronze, the comparison becomes much more obvious. You can see the little spines down the length of the bronze and the sort of the fillets that are taken out at the tips. It's the typical sort of thing. If you look at this in isolation, it's actually okay. When you hold it up next to the better part, it suddenly becomes apparent how different these two things are. As an aside on the main anchor, the quality of the casting is such that you can actually read the lettering on the blades of the anchor. And finally, the last two anchors. Here is the kit's offering from the anchor on the forecastle deck. And again, to be fair to Trumpeter, it's not actually all that bad. And we've got the anchor from the poop deck as well. And again, it's not that bad, but the problems come when you look at it against the cast offering. Little things once again. This one has a genuine loop at the back. The Trumpeter one does not. This one actually comes, you can see, if I can get the camera to focus properly, there are little clamps which were on the deck to hold this down. You can see there, it's a little clamp. It's like two bolts going either side and then two plates going across the blades of the anchor, and they are there, there, and there, and they're not, well, they are visible, but they're hardly visible on the Trumpeter equivalent, you see. So it's just little details like that again, which this one just sort of comes out on top, really. And the same with the back. We've got those nice little clamping details again. And we've also got the sort of the rivets that hold the portion of the anchor together. And again, if you view this plastic one in isolation, it's not so bad. When you view it up against the casting, there just really isn't any actual comparison between the two. And here again are some close-ups for you of both anchors. So what do you have to do to get these ready for your model? There is a bit of work. You've got to trim down the nubs and stuff. When I first got these props, I did have to sort of put a file over the back to smooth down that surface. It's more evident on the anchors. Here is one of the side anchors, and you can see that nub right at the back, a relic of the casting process. That's actually where the bronze would have flowed into the casting shape. So that requires filing down. You can see here is one that I already have filed down. It's not a long-winded process, and because you're working with metal, you just take your time, do it slow, and it isn't too hard. Same thing with the shaft of the anchor. Here's one that has its stub remaining. See on the end? A bit of that you could probably cut off if you've got a pair of pliers with snips on the end. You could probably cut that off, and then it's a case of filing down. Again, here's one that I've already done with the end cut off. And once you've done that job, it's relatively simple. The two parts just sort of slot in together, you see, and you know it's done correctly because you've got the full range of motion on your anchor. Same with the other parts. They require a bit less work, these, because they're so fine, but there are a few areas you just need to file down to get correct. Now the big one is if you're making your kit RC and you're going to use these props, there's a bit more work involved, because when they are sold, they don't come with the back tapped. Here's the central propeller, and you see that you end up with a hole, which is fine for sticking the prop onto the plastic sort of boss that comes in the kit. So if you're just doing a static model, they're fine as is. If, however, you need these to fit onto actual prop shafts, then you will need to drill out deeper into the propeller. Drill out with a drill which is tapping size for whatever shaft size you're using, and then actually tap the hole, and you can see the threads that I've cut inside there. I'm using an M4 size shaft, which meant that I tapped these M4 or 4mm, but obviously don't take my word for that. Whatever size shaft you're using, make sure you drill out the right size hole for the appropriate tap for that. Also, you've got to be a bit careful because these propellers are quite bulbous, so you can drill. I drilled mine out about to the start of the propeller end cap. So just put a stop on your drill to stop you being able to drill any further than that. Otherwise you'll end up drilling straight through the whole thing and it'll be a complete disaster. Tapping is relatively simple. These aren't too difficult to tap. Bronze isn't a particularly hard metal, so tapping through it isn't that hard. It's just one of those things, you know, take your time and you'll be all right. The biggest challenge on something like this is drilling a hole which is absolutely perpendicular to the rotation, because there's nothing worse than having a propeller on a propeller shaft and it's sort of going like this because you haven't drilled a hole in the middle. It just looks awful. That's the hardest part. I managed to do it with my electric drill. I don't have a pillar drill, so it is possible to do by hand. It's just working slowly, very slowly, and making sure that you've taken as much time as you can. The classic thing, measure twice, cut once. If you've got a pillar drill though, it probably will be easier. Just make sure that you put it in a vise with something that isn't going to damage the soft metal. So if you've got any rubber jaws for the vise, that's good, or maybe wrap it in a cloth first or something. Just make sure that you're not actually going to damage the blades of the prop. And once you've done it, it's brilliant. You can slot it onto your prop shafts, nice and easy. I tend to use Loctite to seal it in place because they're not the cheapest props in the world. So using a bit of Loctite just gives you that additional guarantee that they're not going to come off the model while it's running. Here's my other prop in place right there. And what I've done is this is been drilled and tapped, and I put it on the shaft with Loctite. I'll show you the product in just a sec, but I use Loctite, and that's a thread locker. It just increases the friction between the threads on the actual propeller and the threads on the propeller shaft. Makes it less likely that the propeller spins off the shaft. But to give myself even more confidence that I'm not going to lose this prop, I've also used a locking nut. So once you've attached your propeller to the shaft, you push the locking nut back against the propeller. And all that does is it squashes the threads between the propeller and the propeller shaft closer together. And it just gives you even more friction, makes it even less likely that you'll lose a propeller from the shaft. And I mean, I've made model boats for years and I've never yet lost a propeller from a shaft which I Loctited on. This is the product I use, Loctite 243. It's really good and relatively inexpensive. So to conclude, I'm conscious that I don't want to skew this video to the perspective of somebody making an RC ship, because I appreciate that a lot of the people who watch this channel are people who are making static models as well. So I'm going to do it from two different perspectives. So, static model, would I buy these parts? Yes, I would. But only if I wasn't buying the KA set. Now the reason I say this is because these parts are glorious. They ooze quality, you know, they're heavy, they're superbly detailed, they're robust, they're not going to break in a hurry, so they're really, really nice. But the reason I wouldn't buy them alongside the KA set is because they're cast from the KA set. So all of the detail that you get with these parts, you also get with the KA set. I think the only time I might buy both for a static model was if my model boat was going to be moved around a lot, because the one thing that these cast parts will be is a lot more robust. If you're going to be moving your model around hither, thither, everywhere, and it's possible that the propellers might get knocked every so often, then maybe these metal ones are going to be more robust and more suited to you. I think though, on the whole, these cast parts are much more suited to people who don't want to buy one major set, but instead want to buy lots of little add-ons. You know, as we know, there's the KA set, but there's also the Pontos set, and those sets are sort of major things. They include improvements to almost every aspect of the ship. But as we know, there are a lot of smaller add-ons which focus on specific areas, like for example these propellers, but also, you know, you've got things like the scale decks which just focus on the wooden decks. We used to have the photo etch stuff which just focused on the outside of the hull. We've got stuff like the China parts or the Model Monkey 3D printed stuff which focus on very specific elements of the model. And so, you know, I think really the Trumpeter model gets an awful lot of stick, which by and large I don't actually think it deserves. I think it's just let down in certain key areas, like the propellers. You know, I think with one or two well-chosen add-on kits, you can end up with a really nice model just by using the Trumpeter stuff. And I think that's what this set caters for. So if I were building an RC kit, would I buy this? Well, yeah, obviously I would, because I did. I think if you're building an RC kit, these are really good because the propellers actually work, which obviously is the first and foremost, the most important thing. The propellers actually work, and they are a really nice, detailed component. The thing I had to come to peace with quite early on with this model was that I sort of thought I will at some points have to sacrifice accuracy of the model in order for it to actually work on the lake. So I was thrilled to bits when I got these propellers through and it turned out that they actually worked on the lake. So I think for anyone doing a radio control model, they're brilliant. So to conclude, I think these are really good parts. I don't know of any other company anywhere that makes as good a quality and as accurate cast metal parts for Titanic models, and that's high praise indeed. So the final thing is where you can get them if you want to. The easiest place to get them is off the Facebook group devoted to the Trumpeter model. The name of that group is on the screen now, and I will also pop a link to it in the description below. The reason I say that's the easiest place to get them from is because it's all very clearly signposted. There's lots of different combinations you can order these in. You know, you can order just the propellers with a 4-bladed or 3-bladed central propeller, or you can order just the anchors, or you can order the whole lot. You know, there's lots of different combinations of ways you can order. So the reason I suggest the Facebook group is because that it makes it a bit more easy to understand. You can also see high resolution images of these things. You can also ask people their own opinions and stuff. You don't just have to take my word for it. So Facebook group I would recommend as the first port of call for these things. If you don't have Facebook, if you don't use the internet very much or whatever, you can also get these via the links in the description of this video. Please note though, I'm not selling these. This isn't my product. I'm not affiliated with the people who sell this in any way. I don't get any money for any of this or any of that crap. This is just me reviewing a product that I've enjoyed using myself. So do just be aware, if you use those links, you'll be in contact with people who are not myself. So just be aware of that. Also, there is going to be a prize draw on the Facebook group when it reaches 2021 members. So if you're interested in that, opportunity to win some stuff for free, which is always lovely, join the group and join that competition and you'll have a chance of winning. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's been useful. Give me some feedback, because this is the first time I've done a review of anything. So I don't really know what I'm doing. So let me know if I covered things that you wanted to know about. Let me know if I could have covered other things. Let me know if you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, like and subscribe, usual stuff. I will be back soon with a update video on where I'm at, mainly covering the poop deck, stuff like that. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.